set.
Well, let's get started. Welcome to the second monthly meeting of the History Forum at the historic Oysterville Schoolhouse. I'm Dale Olson, came all the way from Cathlamet to be with all of you today. Thank you. And so did my husband, David. We've gathered here together to share and preserve information and memories about the Long Beach Peninsula, Pacific County, and the Lower Columbia region of Southwest Washington. Each of you is important to this process as questions are raised, perspectives are shared, and information is looked at more closely. Your participation will enrich and enlighten the rest of us, so speak up. Just one bit of housekeeping to bring to your attention. There is an emergency broadcast tone that's going to come through on all of our phones at about 11:20 today. So don't be alarmed. We'll just let it happen, and if you need to turn your phone off, I just don't want that to be a surprise to anyone.
Is it 11:20 or 10:20?
2:20 Eastern, so 11:20 Pacific.
Oh, good, so we might be gone.
I hope you don't mean as in expired. Some of us might be wrong, but. Now I'd like to introduce Tucker Walksmith, President of the Oysterville Community Club, to say a few words about the facility and how your donations that you so generously gave there at the table, or that you're planning to give, donations are put to use. Tucker?
Well, the Oysterville Community Club takes care of this building. Now, we don't do many club activities, to be honest with you. There's no wild parties or anything like that. But we do preserve this building. It's the main thing we do. And so I meant to get out some forms in case anybody wanted to join our organization. We would love to have a few more members. And just, like I say, what we do is take care of this building. So your donations for this series probably will go towards heating the building as we get towards winter, actually. But if there's any left over after that, then we will be using it in our ongoing job of fixing up the school. Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Michael Lemeshko for videotaping this to share on the Columbia Pacific Heritage Museum's YouTube channel. And thank you also to Columbia Pacific Heritage Museum for providing the video equipment.
No,
But they're hosting us on their YouTube channel.
are they?
Yes. Well, thank you for being in Pacific County. Okay, well, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sydney Stevens. As a kid, Sydney spent summers in Oysterville at her SB grandparents' house across the road from the church, which her great-grandfather built in 1892, and hearing the old-timers tell stories about the old-timers they remembered. Sydney's interest and immersion in the history of this area might best be described as genetic. But it took living half her adult life elsewhere and another half teaching little kids, and yet another half figuring out what she really wanted to do when she grew up to start this never-ending, never-boring journey into the past. And if you're into arithmetic at all, you might have noticed that half and half doesn't quite add up to 100.
Oh, she's getting really
Sydney loves sharing history with other people who are interested, and we're lucky to have her here in this community, and we're lucky to have her here today to tell us what she knows and what she remembers. Thanks.
Thank you. Lot to live up to do the one by land part, because that's how my great-grandfather got to this area. He came overland from the east. And he was Robert Hamilton Espy. He went, I and my generation always called him R.H. Espy. And, but, you know, there's a list of the Pacific County Reserve, which was formed in 1855, and he was a private enlisted in that reserve, and he listed himself as Hamilton Espy. That's a big handle, you know, for a kid to go through life as Hamilton, and I don't know if that's true. Later on, he had an experience here in Oysterville, which I won't be telling you about today, but you may have read about before, in which they had their own militia here in Oysterville for a while, and he was elected major. And so for most of his days, he went by, here in Oysterville, he went by Major Espy. His wife, Julia, my great-grandmother, I think called him Mr. Espy. And his children, my grandfather and his brothers and sisters, called him Father. But for our purposes, he's R.H. He was born in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, in February of 1826, February 10th. He was the 8th of 10 children. He was the 4th boy. They had 5 girls and 5 boys, and he was the fourth boy. And when he was 4, his mother was widowed. So she managed okay. The older children probably had left by then, the very oldest ones. But by the time he was 10, she decided that he would be better off if he were apprenticed to a tailor. And so that's what she did. She apprenticed him to a tailor, who he considered the rest of his life as a second father. And he worked with a tailor. He always knew the cut of a cloth, and although he never worked as a tailor in his life, he advised his wife on which fabrics were good, and he knew that business very well. So in 1845, when he was 19, he bought his remaining indenture from that tailor for $50, and he said that he would repay it. And I probably will forget to tell you, so I'll tell you. I'll jump ahead. After he got to Oysterville, and had been here 2 years, I think in 1855, or I think 1 year he'd been here. He had enough money to walk back to Pennsylvania and pay back the tailor the $50, and then walk back to Oysterville. I was always impressed with that. That took a lot. So he, when he bought his freedom from the tailor, he went west to Platteville, Wisconsin, where his older sister Margaret and her husband lived. And her husband bought him a small piece of property there in the woods, and it's where he lived, and for 5 years, I think. And 3 things happened while he lived there. He became a Baptist. He had been a Presbyterian, and he converted to be a Baptist. He worked in a lead mine for a while, and he learned that job. And then he worked in the woods, and he became a skilled feller of trees. In 1850, he rode a lumber raft down the Wisconsin and Mississippi to New Orleans, and there he heard about this Beulah land of the West, where trees grew 300 feet high and more, and were as big around as 10 men could reach. And he was smitten. So he went back to Platteville, and he hooked up with a friend. My understanding is that the R.H. got the wagon that they came west on, It was a Conestoga wagon. And they joined the westward moving flow in April of 1852. He was 26 years old. He was slender, wiry, above average height, exceptionally erect of carriage, long stride, and had an indefatigable he was indefatigable beyond the common. He wore a wool shirt, trousers stuffed into heavy leather boots, a mackinaw or a sweater for cold weather, and a felt or coonskin hat. His wagon, his Conestoga, was covered with canvas. The wheels were wide and it was broad, and it was suitable for travel on sand or on the prairie. It was a good vehicle for coming across. A tall man could sleep athwart. I love that word, athwart. Yeah, sideways. And he slept among the towels, clothing, pots, pans, baskets, rifles. He filled the chinks with salt meat, dry